let's get on to our subject, Interplanetary Souls. I was thinking about reincarnation and thinking, when, you know, some people have said they've had past life regressions and they have these memories of lives on Earth, and you hear a lot about that. But when Marie and I, and when we first met actually, we were at a conference, and I've said this before, we were at a conference in Sydney where the gentleman who was the president of the, was it Brian Weiss Foundation? Yeah.
Yep.
And he was saying that, you know, that was back 4 years ago, I think we met. And he was saying in the previous 5 years that people who were having past life regressions were now saying much more prolifically, they're having memories of lives on other planets. So, you know, that made sense to me, but I was really interested in why that was happening. I'm not really sure still, but it was. So I thought we'd explore Interplanetary Souls. Because also a book I was reading and a few other things I'd come across, and I sort of, I guess because of my own interests in the UFO subject, long-term interest, being involved with UFO research Queensland now for 31 years, and speaking to a lot of people who've had report close encounters, and many of those also having reported near-death experiences too, came to my attention some years back that there's a lot more going on in the UFO subject and the afterlife subject than I think we really know, right? That we're just trying to understand these things, a really big picture through a really small keyhole. And so we tend to split things up, I think. It's quite natural for us to be able to bite off bite sizes so we can analyse it and make some sort of sense of it. To me, I think that there is a much greater connection to all of these things. And I received a phone call this week from a lady who's running a first conference in Melbourne, a paranormal conference, and she was interested in having us come along and talk about close encounters, because she's been a ghostbuster for a long time, but she said, I'm hearing reports from people when I do investigations of haunted houses and things like that. I think I'm hearing much more about alien intrusions or alien contact than what I might have previously thought. And I'm trying to introduce that idea to the paranormal community, which is not easy to do, because you go to a paranormal conference and they're full of ghostbusters and that's just about it. And I said the similar thing to the organiser of the Paracon conference a few years ago too, up in the Blue Mountains that we went to, that, you know, why have you just got these people who want to talk about Ouija boards and ghosts, that sort of thing, you know, and how to detect them, you know. The paranormal is huge. It's just a huge thing. I mean, I think the biggest paranormal event that's ever occurred was Fatima. The sightings at Fatima of well, who knows? Who actually knows what, but certainly a woman, or presented as a woman. That's the other thing. Things present themselves to us, regardless of our own interpretation of them. They present themselves to us, and we may not even know if that's what they actually are. So having said all that, I guess, you know, you could start off with Interplanetary Souls from asking ourselves, well, who are we? If we were asked, you know, who or what are we, we'd say we're humans. And we'd say that because that's the consensus reality. But what is a human being? We don't know. We don't really know. We just know what scientists have said. All of this information says you're human, you know, right? So I don't think we really fully understand who we are. We're just scratching the surface here. And we've been defined by biologists and, you know, anthropologists and all sorts of ologists and ists, you know, people who have that on the end of their name. But still we don't really know who we are. So I thought, well, is there any evidence of people being interplanetary souls, incarnating on planet Earth from another planet? So some of you might have heard of this young man. Now, who could say that last name? I could say it earlier. Yes, yes, wonderful. There you go. Yeah, known as Bariska, basically. Has anyone heard of him? No? No? There is another gentleman who's going around with a similar name like Bariska, and he comes out on stage and he stares at people and people have miraculous healings. I don't know how that happens. But that's not this guy. This guy will be 23 now. Okay. So, and he's a really amazing young man, and I've taken these clips off a little documentary, an interview, actually a live interview that was done by Bill Ryan and Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot. Some of you might have heard of them. And but they did it years ago, and when he was this age, and I think he was about 11 here, and he claimed to be from Mars. Now, that could be when I didn't play the video because one, he's speaking Russian. There's an interpreter. There's the two interviewers, and there's someone else. And then, as you're watching it, they're phonetically. It's being phonetically typed up here on the bottom, so it just makes no sense whatsoever. So it was very confusing to sit there for an hour and go through it, but I did. Anyway, so but he claimed that he was from Mars and that he was sent to Earth to help save humans from an apocalyptic nuclear war. Now, he came from a broken family. His father was in the military. His mother was a teacher, a professor actually. And he started to show very amazing abilities very early on. He developed very, very young. So at 4 months old, he spoke simple words. 8 months old, he spoke complete sentences. 1 year old, he started reading newspapers. So a very smart, bright boy. Sorry, his mother was a physician. I got that wrong. So, like I said, it could be easily dismissed as a young boy that, wanted parental attention from very smart parents. Could easily be dismissed. Skeptics would dismiss it that way. But I don't think so, because this was his mission, to help avert an apocalyptic nuclear war. And a lot of scientists and academics and investigators went to his home, and they talked to him and talked to him and talked to him. He got quite bored with it all. And because I think once you tell the story over and over and over again, he was 11 by that time they got to him, and he was bored. But at 4 years old, these scientists got very interested in him and were asking him a lot of questions. And they're identifying that he was a very advanced human being, okay? And he said himself, he is not the only one. So people call these children Indigo Children. I have a bit of an issue with that, because the whole Indigo term came from a woman, I think it was Nancy Tapp, in the 70s, who she started seeing indigo auras around children being born, and that was where the whole indigo thing came from, okay? And that was just one person. Doesn't mean that they weren't around other children, but for some reason she saw them. So let me think. By the age of 2, he started giving signs of brilliant intelligence, language skills, unique memory. As soon as he was 3, he started talking about the universe with parents. Without any reference or reading any kind of book, he was able to name all the planets, their satellites, name a number of galaxies, which was scary for his parents at first. He gained maturity very quickly, and he used to meditate at age 4. Wow. Okay. He left his parents amazed and confused, of course. No one taught him to meditate, and he'd often sit in the lotus position and describe detailed facts about Mars and its civilizations. Now, he was featured in Pravda, and that's how he became known by a university professor called Gennady Belimov, I suppose. And he witnessed Boris, then aged 7, astound an adult audience during a camping trip in which he held them spellbound for an hour and a half as recounted tales of past lives on Mars and Lemuria, and warned of catastrophes due to affect the Earth in 2009 and 2012. Now, just out of that, just this morning I was looking up world disasters in 2009 and 2012. 2009 wasn't a huge amount, but 2012 was off the page, right? The only thing that was really huge in 2009 was in Indonesia, where Sumatra was hit with an earthquake, and there were more than 1,000 people killed. That was the biggest disaster. But in 2012, you've got Hurricane Sandy, you've got Typhoon Bopha in Indonesia, you've got the Myanmar earthquake, flash flooding in... what have I written that down? Uttarakashi in India, twin earthquakes in Iran, the Assam floods, Beijing had a flash flood, Pakistan had flash floods, blah, blah, blah. There was a whole lot that went on in 2012. So if you look at natural disasters, they're caused by the movement of the Earth's crust, mismanagement of our natural systems, and of course our civilization spreading out to where disasters naturally occur anyway. We didn't live there before and now we do, okay, because of the terrain, all sorts of different things. But I guess my point in pointing out those things was, well, what was actually causing them? Because that's what I'm thinking. Well, I know we're told we have reasons for natural disasters, like you have a lot of rain, so you have mudslides and obvious things like that. But there are a whole lot of other things, like when it comes to earthquakes. There's a whole lot of theories as to why some of those occur, and some of us have heard about HAARP and about controlling weather and different things like that. I mean, I don't know, but I just thought I'd have a look at that. Yes, anyway, so Kerry Cassidy and Bill Ryan, they interviewed Boris in 2007, okay? And there was a short piece about him published in the Nexus magazine, if anyone might have remembered that then. So, now since that time, I don't think I've got, oh yeah, he says there were ships, he was on ships that were of an airplane type, but they were triangular, and there were ships in a drop shape as well. We have had people in the UFO community report those types of ships. Also, the ships didn't have, they weren't magnetic, there were turbines rotating and plasma that took fire somehow. I didn't study this in detail. And then they would speed up. Unfortunately, such an engine didn't let ships fly out of the solar system to another galaxy from where he's from. Okay, so there were different types of ships. Now, certainly we had a huge amount of triangular UFOs reported to us, and worldwide in the early 90s. And I'm not aware of ones that were reported before that. I'm sure they were, but there was just a huge wave over Belgium and different things like that. So that's just a very loose connection. Okay, I can't provide any evidence for this, but I'm just trying to sort of put it all together. He said a portal is the same like a teleport. It slows down time and opens a kind of a portal where time is speeding up fast. I can't say exactly, I don't remember. It opens on one side in a few seconds or even minutes. If the transfer is far away, it opens in another area of space. And this is to do with time travel. It has almost nothing to do with time. The portal just opened, and not all ships had the same principle. Ships with plasma engines were limited to travel only in solar systems or in high speed. The ships in the shape of a drop were carrying other ships. And you've seen a drop-shaped ship, haven't you? Craft. Ship. Drop ship. You say that fast. And he goes on to say there was a hatch on them. Inside upper part there was a freight module, and since these drops were huge, they could take one ship, an airplane or a triangle inside of the lower bottom part. So these are the ships from Mars he's talking about, okay? Each race had its own technology and innovations. For example, if we had plasma and ion engines, others had energy engines. They became militant and started wars against each other. Each race was absolutely individual and had different equipment, different weapons, and even ships. Not all the ships were different. And that's his mum. And she says what he told her, the wars were bloody and a lot of people died, not only from Earth but from Mars and other galaxies. And she's saying you told about the Saturn project and the Jupiter project. But he was very hesitant in talking about these things. he says they carried capsules containing something. They wanted to make Jupiter into a second sun. Okay, so they wanted to actually shoot something into Jupiter and make it a sun.
NASA tried that actually.
Yeah. So, now what was I going to say about that? I've forgotten. Oh yes, a lot of this was corroborated in a book written by this gentleman, Nikolai Levashov. And this is the interpreter, and he affirms using Vedic sources and other historic documents that galactic wars have been fought for many thousands of years on Mars. This is, sorry, she's referring to this guy, sorry. Okay, so he's written that in this book, and she's referring to him and saying, yes, he has all of that affirmed from the Vedic sources. And he says, this was a transmigration of souls when he came here. I was killed and everybody was killed on Mars. There were not many souls on Mars, so they would use special stones to attract souls. Now, I don't know whether he means stones or crystals or something that they call, well, like stone-like, like a capsule of some description. The war started when they made Merkaba. This is a device which teleports a soul to another point. And they teleported to the Earth, but I didn't see that and I didn't do that. I just read that about in an information source. Now, information source on Mars. Okay? It was not a book, but an information storage, something like the internet. At those times, this was like a hall of computers where you enter the internet. Or like it. He says, I remember that time when I was 14 or 15 years old. The Martians were waging wars all the time, so I would often have to participate in air raids with a friend of mine. We could travel in time and space, flying in round spaceships, but we would observe life on Earth on triangular aircraft. Martian spaceships are very complicated. They are layered and they can fly all across the universe. Some of them, I would, because, you know. The human life will change when the Sphinx is opened. It has an opening mechanism somewhere behind the ear. I do not remember exactly. But if you go to images of the Sphinx, there actually is something down here. Not really behind the ear, but down here. I was looking at it the other day. Okay. So there's a young man who, by the way, is now missing. Apparently, he and his mother have moved to a very obscure place. It has something to do, somehow the Russian government have gotten involved and they've ensconced them away somewhere in a very private place. Not threatened them, they're okay apparently. I've tried to find, I've put in where is Boris now, blah blah blah. Things come up about this earlier story when he was 11 that really went out to the media. But someone claimed that they had been in contact and that he had said they were all right, but somehow the Russian government was not keeping them there, but protecting them, basically, keeping them away from the public, from major public. So I imagine they've gone through a lot of the stuff that he said. They'd be very interested in that. But anyway, that's one example. Now another example is this one, and this is Australian. Anyone heard of this book? The Book of Yule. I think the only Book of Yule I've ever seen is right here. It's an apport. It's an apport. It is rare as hen's teeth. Okay. It was written in 1977. It's in the UFO library. By the way, I'll be checking your bags before you leave. Jules Verne claimed to be from a planet called Mickle. Yes, Mickle. He came to Earth in the 1930s. Obviously, he's dead now. Now, Mary and I were down in Sydney, 3 years ago for the investigator course? Yeah, something like that. And we had lunch somewhere with some people, and I remember speaking to a gentleman there, I don't know if you do, who knew Yul Werner. Do you remember? That, yeah, I can't remember his name, I've lost track of him. Anyway, so I know he was a real person. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think he was in his 90s when he died, and he died, he was found, he lived in the Blue Mountains, I think it was, and he was found outside, cold, and dead, basically. But, so he came to Earth, incarnating in the body of a young Swedish boy who was dying of double pneumonia. At the time of his transference, he was a member of a space expedition sent by a high council to offer astro-scientific help to Earth. This is what he says in this book. Now, he was born in Scania, there, down the bottom of Sweden. During World War II, while still in his teens, he joined the Swedish merchant fleet and saw action at sea in German and Dutch ports. Following the war, he studied aeronautical engineering and later helped pioneer the world's first Delta wing plane, the Saab 210 Draken. So there's no dum-dum, that's what I'm saying, basically. Although we were saying before this meeting, just because you have an education doesn't mean you can't go out there with some really weird ideas, but anyway. He emigrated to Australia in 1953 and worked for a Sydney firm developing business communications. He had a lifelong interest in the arts and mysticism and pursued the study of the occult, metaphysics, the Kabbalah, tarot, astrology and yoga. But it's in Australia where he awakened to his true identity and what his mission was in coming to Earth. And he says his people were aware of an emerging humankind that was in troubled waters. His planet had accepted the recommendation of the Galactic Council to act as one of Earth's 7 guardians. According to cosmic law, such guardianship must be executed by counselling rather than by force. Complete respect prevails in regard to planets' right to self-determination. But there are enemies who do not share these ideals about law and freedom, and that complicates matters, and frequently Yul's people have had to wage war against adversaries who for many years had tried to subdue Earth. Now in the UFO literature, there's a lot of talk about these sorts of things, particularly through the 1990s, because there was a whole plethora of UFO books published then. Now he goes on to say that they developed an electronic means to communicate with the spiritual universe, okay? Through mastery of genetics and astroscience, regeneration has been perfected, and as a result their efforts are more and more directed towards guiding young worlds to maturity. The question is why, right? I'm not going to say, I'm just going to assume, let's just assume that this is true, okay, for the moment. And that's a big assumption. But the question then becomes why? What's the bigger picture about that? So, let's get on to Dr. Linda Backman. Now, she has written this book, Souls on Earth, which is the book that I've been reading, which is very interesting. She's a psychologist, and she's spent 25 years as a regression therapist, and the last 25 years as a regression therapist before. She's been a psychologist for longer than that. Anyway. Now, Linda lost her baby at age 25. Then in 1993, she lost a colleague who died of lung cancer in his early 30s. And he began communicating and showed her scenes of past lives that they'd shared together. And she thought she was nuts, but she dived into the subject of past life. She's trying to understand what's going on and trying to make sense of everything. And of course she found that science didn't have any tools to prove anything either way, okay? So she says after 25 years of regression therapy, and maybe I'd like to get your opinion on this too.
Well, I know Linda Backman.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, that's good. She says that we are here because we've been engineered to come into physical form, to help the Earth evolve and for our own soul's progress. Because you can't, she says that you can't make progress in a non-physical form, that you need to be in a physical form to make that progress. I don't know. I don't know about that, but that's what she says. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong. So, and I've got a blank, and there it is. She says this is the qualification list to see if you're an interplanetary soul. You need to have 3 or more. You feel like an alien, you don't fit in with the crowd. Who feels like that? Who feels like that? At some stage in your life?
Yeah.
Oh, come on, just own up to it.
That's why you're here.
I feel comfortable with most of these aliens.
Strong interest in science fiction. Who's got a strong interest in science fiction? Okay. Diagnosed with ADHD. You don't have to put your hand up for that one.
Not officially diagnosed.
That's all right, Tim. We know.
I'm trying to avoid that.
Skills and gifts in music, art, technology, writing, science, etc. Aversion to social interaction, or the complete opposite, highly socially engaging. Okay. As a child, language or communication abilities delayed or developed slowly. Health challenges such as autoimmune disorders, digestive issues, allergies, chemical sensitivities and insomnia. And don't understand the social and political complications of Earth life. Basically the rejection of others based on skin colour, religion, ethnicity, etc. All that compartmentalising going on. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong, it just means it's what she's observed. And obviously, you know, following trends of what people say. And I have found that that is, except for the ADHD, and except for the, don't know about this one, the rest of it also comes up in people who report close encounters. Okay? And people who have near-death experiences too. Okay. So she's put together what she thinks that there are 7 soul rays. And she says, Ray 1 soul, you are the agent of change in your family, and I put in tribe, okay, organisation and work. And I think this one, you could put human tribe there, you know. 'Cause I see a lot of people, I know a lot of what some of you do, and other people I know what they do, and they're change artists, change makers, bringing people together to change the way people think. You're bold enough to perhaps be unpopular because you encourage change that you believe is necessary. And Abraham Lincoln is a Ray 1 soul, she says. And I've put in here, if you're a generational pattern breaker, meaning, like I know with myself, in my family, I'm talking about in your family, that I got to, my family's just wacko. And so I felt like the black sheep, because I think I'm quite balanced, which they are not. And I'm not talking that, that they're, well, let's not even go there. But do you see patterns in the family line? You think, I have to stop that. That's just not unhealthy. That's really unhealthy. That has to stop. I'm not passing that on to my children, or I'll talk, or just letting my family know that I'm not like that, and that's not, and I'm not going to have it, So, so you can change that the next generation in your family line. Ray 2 soul, you're a type of teacher or priest who wants to bring out the best in everyone. You guide and encourage others to find their gifts. And Paramahansa Yogananda is a Ray 2 soul. Ray 3, you're a student of many disciplines. Learning and melding knowledge is your love. Steven Spielberg, she says, is a Ray 3. 4, you're the one who strives to create harmony in your family or work group, even when nudging is required. You're like an artisan. Leonardo da Vinci is a Ray 4 soul. I tell you, if you're striving to create harmony in your family, you're probably a Libra.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bring the balance.
Yes.
Ray 5, you're like a warrior committed to the strategy of implementing plans for work or family. Galileo is an example of that. Ray 6, you're devoted to teamwork and community as an unwavering person who idealises being supportive of everyone. Apparently Jimmy Carter was a Ray 6. I wouldn't know them. Anyway, there you go. And the last one, you merge all energies of rays 1 through 6 to be the alchemist or sage who knows the mystery of eternal consciousness. And Buckminster Fuller is an example. And rays 1 to 5 are more public people. These last two are behind the scenes people. So now she says, from all the people that she's done regressions with, that, and I put the some, because you can never know all, some ET souls come from places where there is no war, no abuse and no racial segregation. And I think that's why some people just find those things so hard to deal with. You know, the segregation, I mean, I'm a pacifist, that's for sure, and I hate abuse. I'm not saying I'm ET soul, but you know, I'll relate to those things. And I'm sure a lot of you do too. So, in some of the regressions that she's done, the beings that are talking to her through her clients say, we are a body-mind vehicle powered by our soul. And the illusion held by humanity that our body-mind is separate from our soul disallows all the information from the higher realm to come forward. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Illusions. So what does that mean for Earth? What does that, and our life here, what does all of that mean? So Linda goes on to say, why do interplanetary souls come to Earth? Because that's you know, what's the big plan, what's the big picture? Well, she writes that the interplanetary souls come to Earth to teach and to learn. They bring their wisdom gained from their home base to benefit humanity. And by the same token, interplanetary souls arrive on Earth to continue with their own ongoing soul evolution. They transmit the understanding they gain on Earth back to their home base, and sharing the knowledge of what they have learned on Earth benefits the evolution of all celestial beings and aids future interplanetary souls who embody on Earth. Sounds a bit like the Borg. No. But, you know, like say people who are here having experiences, when they go back to where they're going to go, they're taking that experience and it's being integrated into those and given to those who are about to come here, so they don't come here and have to start back at square one again. They can come here and start from square 10 because the information has been passed on. That's what she's saying. So, the bigger picture. So if you put all that together, if you put all, you know, you can collect as much information as you like, but you've then got to sort of make some sort of meaning of it. So it seems that we're on the planet where we're not just, if reincarnation is true, we're not just reincarnating on this planet, we're reincarnating on many planets. We've come from many places before here. And actually, if you think about that, if you expand that out into our Milky Way galaxy, right? And I got no clue how all that works, that there's a whole lot of us who are transmigrating all over the place. And if you think about that then it's obvious that we're not always going to feel quite comfortable in the planet that we've come to. But there are going to be things that we struggle with. We're going to feel separate. We're going to see things differently. We're going to have a different paradigm to the one that the consensus reality says is true, right? And that's okay as long as we recognise that it's okay to be different, because guess what? In the long run, everyone's different anyway, you know? And that's a huge process. If that's true, that's a huge process of what's going on. There's a huge mechanism at play. There's a big plan. There's a whole lot going on. Well, let's just say, see, I'm trying to understand or put this together with what I've learned over the last 30 odd years from talking to people who've reported close encounters, right? And how that sort of fits in with what they've said. And some of them have said, you know, the other thing I was going to say, a few of them have said to me that they have memories, pre-birth memories of, there was one particular guy who came to a close encounter group that I ran a few years ago, and he said, I have clear memories of being told that I'm going to there by these beings who look like aliens, basically. And I said, I'm not going there. No, I'm not going. No, there's no way I'm going. But he did. He was made to come for whatever reason. I can't quite remember that now. The reason I asked about pre-birth memories is because I was talking to a couple of people on through social media about pre-birth memories, and this one person says, I have memories from before I was born, and one of them is the memory of boarding some type of craft or airplane-like travel vessel. And the knowing was that we were going to the place where we could be born. Everybody was aware that we were going where we could be born, into the physical realm. It wasn't weird or really even frightening, it was just how it was, and everyone knew it. She spoke about it on some other social media platform, but she was ridiculed and it made her doubt herself. Why not? Another person said, my very first memory is the instant of being consciousness in a black void. As it evolved, I found myself in front of a screen with pictures of my lifetime being flashed upon it until, at the age of 2.5, I fully entered my physical body on this plane. Interesting. Over the last year, though, whenever I meditate, I find myself in a large white room with a large window facing out onto the stars. I feel I'm on a large ship. It's very familiar, and I've begun to wonder if I've actually been in this space. So we've heard that quite a few times, spiritual beings having a human awakening, or or spiritually having a human experience. I think it's more like an awakening, like just remembering. I think sometimes we can forget if we are from other places, regardless of why or what we've come to do. We can forget that because there are a lot of things that can happen, and there's physical ailments, there's emotional distortions, and there's perceptual framework filters out a lot of things, and we can have I forgot about that one. We are the extraterrestrials. Let's go to this one, forgetting our purpose. Why am I here? A lot of people run around and say, are saying, I found this a lot with people in the UFO community, particularly saying things like, I know I came here to do something, I just don't know what it is. That's really common.
Yeah.
And I think maybe because we're still growing into our purpose, that might actually happen too. That Linda Backman talks about coming here and having a mix of karma and dharma, and you're working it out at the same time. So you're sort of learning your lessons at the same time that you're doing what you came to do. So, and that can be quite complicated. Just going back to this one, I put that in there because I was thinking about how if there are interplanetary souls and who are incarnate on the Earth, then within us, and I think Barry was having this chat to me a couple of days ago, if you remember, about we are the aliens, and maybe that's why we feel like we are the aliens on planet Earth. We feel so different.
Yeah.
Well, if the aliens in the other realm are, say, for example, orbs, we are floating around with orbs, we're taking some form to be a complete particle of energy, so we probably take an orb shape. And if we make the decision to come return to Earth in a human body, or at the point of conception or somewhere early on, the soul orb enters the physical body and maintains it there, like for the life of that body. And when that body is finished and we depart, the orb of soul expels from the human body back into the realm of wherever it is. So basically, we have all of us have an alien within us. If that soul is the alien or the extraterrestrial type entity that wants to relive this physical life, you know what I mean? So it makes sense to me to think that that's the possibility. We all have aliens within us, and that's probably why the UFOs come down here, because they have connection with the alien within us, the soul. You know, they're interested in the soul for that purpose, because it's that's the extraterrestrial part of the system that we're involved in.
So they're coming for their own.
Well, they come in,
In a way.
just checking on, seeing how it's developed. Maybe there's a communication between them. I had the feeling when I was skywatching in the 90s, seeing so much UFO activity, that it proved to me over a period of time that they recognised me. And I thought the only way that they could recognise me would be through my actual consciousness or with the colours in my aura at the time. And I think they have the ability to see your auras and probably be able to read your auras and be able to pick you out in a crowd if that's what they want to do. And that information too is also transferred to other types of UFOs. So they can also recognise you as part of what another UFO entity or whatever it is has actually observed you. Because I was able to bring them in and they were coming in to have a look at me because I was attracting them in by using certain means. Therefore, you know, they were starting to come in quite regularly, and you know, like this was transferred to other alien or UFO type objects, whatever they are. You know, they're not all spaceships with alien in them; they're entities within their own right. You know?
And I also think that they're more involved. My personal opinion is they're more involved in human incarnation than what we think. And there's certainly various witness testimony for that. And in regard to the orbs, in those people who've read the Betty Andreasson case, for example, she reported seeing these orbs that were bouncing around inside a craft, and they were coming to rest on something like this, but like a modern sort of slick seat. And they'd come to rest here and they would unfold into a humanoid form. And then they would roll back up again and start bouncing around. Now, what that is, I don't know. Whether that was a soul or whether it was something they generated or an experiment that they were doing, or who knows what that was. But she said that's what she saw. Then you've also got Susie Hanson's story where she talks about being on a craft, and the soul of her as yet unborn son was placed by aliens into her body, and she actually communicated with him first. He was like a blue orb, and she was having telepathic communication on this craft with him. And then they later on they brought that blue orb in and placed it into her abdomen. Who knows what that's about, right? But I think, and they're not the only stories, they're not the only things that people talk about. So maybe what we call incarnation and reincarnation is something that is totally unknown to us at this stage. I mean, they're the words we're using so that we can talk about it, right? But we're talking about something from another domain with the tools from this domain, with words from this domain, trying to understand what that means. And just like I think a lot of angelic visitations were interpreted as angels, maybe they were aliens, and in the future maybe alien interaction will be interpreted as something else. You know, why would it stop evolving or our perspective changing as we get to know more? So I don't think we're in physical form, we die, we're in a non-physical form, and then we reincarnate back. I think there's a whole bigger picture behind all that.
I think so too.
A really, really, really big picture,
Absolutely.
which I can't even grasp at this stage. So we can forget our purpose. If there is a huge purpose in some of our lives, which I think for some people there is, they come here and they make a difference. Whether that was predestined or not planned, I don't know. But I mean, I can't say for sure. I think it probably was, but we can forget. People can forget. I think that there are some things that can trigger to remind you of what you came here to do, or and there's not so much a what you came to do, but direction towards, you know, what you came, why you're here. Put it that way. It's maybe a clearer thing. And I think illness is one way. I think getting ill is a particular way, and you can look at that like a shamanic illness or a creative illness or something like that. Which, if you're going, I think if you're going a little bit too far off track, I'm sort of in between you and Lloyd here. I've got a sort of thing because I've looked at astrology quite a bit, and I know that you're born with a certain astrological chart. I'm not talking about horoscopes and all that, but an astrological chart is stamped with the energies of the universe at the time that you're born, and that governs your personality, the things you do in life, how you come before the public, all those sorts of things, your relationships, etc. And you can actually get the timings of all those with a good astrologer too. So there is some sort of preset, but there are many paths on that preset.
Oh, I agree totally.
Yeah.
I agree totally.
So there, I think that there is something, like Lloyd was saying, like Hitler, right? Going to be leanings towards that you don't have to do it that way. You can express it in a different way.
Yeah.
So I think we're probably talking about the same sort of things.
So.
Yeah. So illness, I think, is one way that we can be reawakened to what we're doing here. And I know that it's come up here that people have a lot of autoimmune diseases, you know, like that she was talking about. It comes up in people who have near-death experiences and people who report close encounters as well. Now, that may just be common to humanity. I can't really say because I haven't done those statistics. I don't know. So you have to think of that. But illness certainly comes up, and illness. And I've had an illness for 10 years. I had an illness for 10 years, which really was a life purpose. It wasn't a change of direction. It was a deepening. It was a deepening and a broadening of what I was already, the path I'd stepped on. It's like, come on, hurry up. You know, like, get on with it. Which I was told by one psychic. I only ever had one psychic reading in my life when I was in my 20s. And I think I said this recently to the group. You know, you are who you came to be, now do what you came to do. And I wasn't really doing what I came to do, I think. And I don't know, that happened at a psychic fair that was organised by Glenys Mackay, where I was already involved with the UFO group at the time. I'd been studying near-death experiences for a decade or more before that. So it was already there, but I just needed to get on with it, you know, really get on with it. And probably now where I am, with the both fields, and I guess the paranormal in general, and that's probably been speeded up by meeting Barry too, in recent years, because he's sort of expanded my mind more into the paranormal. So some of us might be interplanetary souls, some of us may be from other places. It may be an explanation as to why you feel so different to other people. So I'm just going to leave it here. I'm just here for the Great Awakening. I can imagine it's sort of lining up at the gate, you know, to the big slide down to earth. Let's just say it's a slide. It's like, buckle up because you're in for a hell of a ride. Anyway, that's it for today. If anyone else wants to say anything.
Thank you very much. Thank you.